Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's 9:19 a.m. on October 26th. This is a special call planning commission meeting for a public hearing. We're going to get started, but first I'm going to go over some rules and how we're going to handle things today. We're going to start with boards and commissions speaking to us about their official position. If it's not your official position from the board, then you get to sign in just like everybody else. For the rest of you, we'll call you by number. You're going to come up and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. We're going to try to limit it very strictly to 3 minutes. If you have donated time, you can have up to 2 folks donating time for a total of 9 minutes. I'm going to call the number that's whose turn it is to speak, and you'll come up to one of these podiums, and the following 2 numbers, if you'll just line up in the front on the opposite podium and one more at the other podium. We'll just keep this rolling quickly, and that way we'll try to be efficient with our time. We're gonna go in order. Like I said, I've been advised not to take numbers out of order. So if you miss your number, you'll have to sign back up. So I really would hate to do that. So please keep track of which numbers are coming and how fast they're going, and you can do some math and figure out when your turn would be. For the commissioners, let's try to maintain quorum. We're not going to sit here for 7 hours, but we'll take breaks maybe every 2 hours. Is there any opposition to take a break every 2 hours? Just look around and make sure we've got at least 7 on the dais if you're going to take a break and step down from the dais. Anything else that I'm missing? We've got a quorum on the dais, I should have said. Okay. All right, we're going to get rolling. Is there any boards and commission representatives that are speaking to us about their official position? Come on up. Are you with the Parks Board?
I am. I remember we were on that interview today.
Yes, welcome.
We're freezing, and again, I'm also cold. Good morning. Is my mic on?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I'm Dawn Lewis. I'm chair of the Parks and Recreation Board, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak. I'm going to be brief because there are a lot of people here who want to speak, and I want to be very, in deference to your time and to their time, I will make my remarks brief. So in your backup, it should include the resolution that the Parks and Recreation Board passed regarding the Parkland Dedication Ordinance, and that's what I really want to speak about today. I obviously wouldn't be here if I wasn't a huge advocate of preserving and protecting our parks and green spaces because they play such an important role in making a difference in our cities and community and making them as special as they can be. Those who've been in Austin forever and ever and those who are just joining the cool Austin crowd are here in part because of the parks and green spaces that our city has to offer. So this tool, this Parkland Dedication Ordinance tool, is crucial in its role in making sure we can continue to have those parks and green space. It was originally adopted in 1985, as you know, and then it was modified in 2016, and that modification took place after 2 years of input from a really diverse group of stakeholders, including the Real Estate Council, Downtown Austin Alliance, Austin Builders Association, and the Austin Neighborhood Council. And they all got together and made those modifications. We know that the ordinance is necessary in order to fulfill the goals of Imagine Austin, which states, as we grow into a more compact city, we will also have an increased need for parks and open spaces distributed across these new urban places. These are huge community assets, and we are already lacking in them in our city. And it has worked. Since its inception, Parkland Dedication has added over 1,700 acres of new parkland to our city. It's done so in a manner that has had minimal impact on development. It's only 6%, the 6% of the Parkland Dedication cases have resulted in land since 1985 rather than a fee in lieu. Of those 6%, approximately 80% of that land was in the floodplain, which is not developable. And the process also provides an early determination option at pre-submittal for developers to work out dedication with the city. So it's predictable and it's transparent. As I said, it's played a crucial role in helping to fulfill the goals of Imagine Austin, which also includes ensuring that our city's parkland is distributed equitably across our cities. So all citizens, regardless of where they live or where they are on the economic spectrum, have access to parkland and open space. It has been instrumental in helping to adhere to the council's direction to staff, which is to protect parks and park improvements through the city, and to Mayor Adler's pledge to meet the Trust for Public Lands goal of making sure all Austinites will only have to walk 10 minutes to access a park by 2050. And additionally, as we look toward the future of Austin, we really have to acknowledge the advent of climate change and rising temperatures. As Austin grows, as it becomes more dense, urban parks are going to play a crucial role in helping to mitigate flooding, to capture carbon, and provide cooling spaces for our citizenry. I don't know if you've ever taken a child to a park before, but I have in my personal life, and I work in education. I've gotten to see a lot of the interaction between children and parks. I've never seen a child not run to a park because they see those playscapes, they see those adventures they could have, they see those green spaces, and it makes it what it is. And I actually think adults would like to run to parks as well, because parks are areas for our community to play, to explore nature, to escape the indoors, and they increase community engagement, encourage healthy lifestyles, and help clean the air and so much more. Austin is a much more vibrant and livable city because of our parks and open spaces, and this parkland dedication ordinance is crucial in helping make it so. So I really encourage you to uphold and keep the parkland dedication ordinance in its current version. And the resolution that the Parks and Recreation Board passed is in your backup, which also backs up what I just said. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate your commitment. I know what it's like being a volunteer on one of these boards. I know how many hours you put in, and I do appreciate it. And thanks for letting me speak. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for providing the backup. Any other boards and commissions? Commissioner Leighton Burwell.
Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners, the Board of Adjustment has had little time to look at the code. We've just formed our work group. So all I have today is what we were able to vote on at our October meeting at the Board of Adjustment. This letter was sent to Mayor Adler, the City Council, and City Manager. It's called Board of Adjustment Concerns Regarding Proposed Land Development Code. Mayor and City Council members, as a sovereign and quasi-judicial board established by state law, the Board of Adjustment has a vested interest in the newly proposed LDC. Given the importance of that document and the board's critical role in hearing variances, special exceptions, and code interpretations, we ask that the process of review and input not be rushed. With City Council wanting to have first reading on the LDC prior to the end of this year, there was little time for our board or other boards and commissions to thoughtfully review and provide input on this complex and lengthy document. We have concerns that the rush to produce the new code will result in a myriad of unintended consequences that will both undermine the integrity of the new code and overburden city boards that are tasked with administering our respective sections of the LDC. To that end, the Board of Adjustment, in an unprecedented motion at our October meeting, has requested that this letter be sent to the Mayor and Council to identify two additional concerns. 23-3B-4040 Special Exception Level 2. This entire section is not in our current LDC. The Board of Adjustment has seen no historical need nor justification to add this type of exception. Our concern is that this new exception, which largely indemnifies staff for mistakes on project reviews, may create both a more lenient review environment and can potentially lead to increases in the number of errors by staff. In addition, it may result in the Board of Adjustment needing to arbitrate on issues of fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation by applicants. We think this is an unnecessary item to include in the LDC and sets a bad precedent of diminished responsibility. I've been told, this is an aside, this is not in the letter, I've been told by staff that will be removed, but the fact that it was in there to begin with is of some concern. The other item is 23-020 code interpretations and 23-3B 2030 use determinations. One of the more important, although infrequent, duties of the Board of Adjustment is our role in appeals of code interpretations and use determinations. Of particular concern is the very short tolling time, often as short as 14 days, in which a citizen must discover and appeal staff interpretations and determinations. In addition, the Board of Adjustment is asking that the proposed code be modified to ensure immediate notification of our staff liaison for timely dissemination to all board members, all appealable interpretations and determinations as soon as possible and within the appealable time frame. This will enable the board to review these judgments by staff, to track trends in the types of issues that are being challenged, and to allow the board to provide input to City Council regarding issues with the LDC that may need amendment. The Board of Adjustment is in the process of forming a work group. We've done that since then, but to further vet the proposed LDC so that we can give feedback to council and staff on the items that we find problematic. In the interim, we ask that you consider the items outlined above for revision and or deletion from the new LDC. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners? Come on up, ma'am. Is this your official position of your commission?
Yes, I'm Vice Chair of the Arts Commission. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
You'll have 10 minutes.
Thank you. I'll actually be brief. My name is Michelle Polgar, and I'm Vice Chair of the Arts Commission, and I am Chair of the Joint Music Commission, Arts Commission Working Group on Land Use and Permitting Issues. And I want to thank you for your time today and for the arduous work that you're doing. I really appreciate that. Wanted to say that we're grateful that the new staff revision of the code includes an addition in the general purpose section, general standards for all, 23-4A 110 purpose, has added to cultivate to sustain the city's culture, music, and arts communities and industries. We would encourage the addition of language to include diversify and cultivate as well as sustain those items. And we would also ask to be part of a conversation moving forward that would develop specific details on what those items would be. We think that the land use rewrite is a powerful tool to provide support and diversification and cultivation of arts, music, and culture in our fair city, and we thank you for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other commissions? Okay, if there are no other commissions, I'm going to invite staff up. If you want to tell us, there was a late release last night about some corrections or supplemental report. And staff, if you'll just help us walk through that. You'll have 3 minutes. I understand the supplemental report will have to do with corrections and some clarifications and so on.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
thank you.
And while you're doing that, if another member of the staff can find me the sign-up sheets. I don't have any sheets for the speakers.
Sure. Peter, could you help with finding the sign-up sheets? Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners, Chair and Commissioners. Anique Baudet, City of Austin Land Development Code Revision Team. I'm here today with co-lead Brent Lloyd, and we want to thank you for your service in this important milestone for this project. We know that today you're going to hear a lot of input, which we have also been listening to since May 2nd, when we started on the project in service to the council direction. So we released on October 4th, we released a draft code, map, and staff report. And we've been talking with the community extensively, as well as city council. We've also held some public testing and been out in the community listening. And yesterday, we issued a supplemental report that, as you said, includes corrections, errors, map errors that have been pointed out to us through the numerous meetings we've been going to, as well as some substantive approaches change in approaches to our staff recommendation regarding transition zones and the application of missing middle zones in high opportunity areas, as well as a recommended change in direction for the application of those zones in areas experiencing displacement. So that was out yesterday. There's also a substantive piece related to an amendment to Imagine Austin and the growth concept map, which I will hand over to Brent Lloyd to talk about the specifics of. I want to, before I finish, I want to commit to the community that this is an iterative process, and we have been working not only to release the draft on October 4th, but since then to listen and continue to iterate and make this code the best that it can be so that it can be an improvement from what we have today, but also be responsive to our community values and what people have been telling us over the last several weeks and months. So we look forward to being here today. We are here to support you all as well as the public and answer any questions or clarifications that you may have through the public hearing. And I'll hand it over to Brent at this point, and Peter is going to look at sign-up sheets. So thank you very much.
I've got those. Thank you.
Brent Lloyd with the leadership team for the Land Development Code rewrite. And thank you all this morning for your time and attention to this matter, and thank the public in attendance for what we look forward to the public hearing and to hearing all the comments. In all the work involved in putting this together, we've neglected to assign it a case number, but for purposes of this morning, we'll just call it case number 1. So before you today is case number 1. The LDC revision, and as publicly noticed, this is accompanied by a corresponding amendment to the comprehensive plan. The code is about more than transition areas. It's about more than zoning. It has multiple chapters, and those are before you in your public notice and in your backup. The code contains an introduction, which lays out fundamental concepts and tenets of the Land Development Code, and those include a number of propositions that are not stated in current code that should be of interest to you and the community. The code declares that the more restrictive requirement always applies if it's in conflict with the less restrictive requirement. It places the boards and commissions enabling provisions in the Land Development Code itself. They're currently housed elsewhere. And it provides a strong foundation for enforcing the code. It says that a property that has a structure without a permit is in violation of the code. It makes a number of other statements that are, we believe, essential to be made to enforce and apply our regulations. Chapter 2 is the administrative procedures chapter, and again, it's a foundational chapter that enables our public notification process, that enables our appeals process, that places in the code appeals that occur today but are not actually acknowledged in the code. It provides a foundation for stop work orders, for revocation orders, and makes a number of improvements to all of those procedures. Chapter 3 is the one we've talked about the most, and that is the zoning code, and you'll hear a lot about that today. Chapter 4, the general planning procedures. This chapter groups together our watershed regulations, our parkland dedication requirements, and all the various sort of fundamental site-level requirements that apply outside the context of zoning. Chapter 5 is the subdivision chapter, another fundamental chapter to development review that expands on and builds on our current subdivision chapter and makes a number of improvements that we're happy to answer questions on. It's not a chapter that receives a great deal of discussion or attention, but it's one that we're available to talk about and answer questions about. Chapter 6 groups together permitting requirements. We have permitting requirements that are scattered throughout today's code in different places, different locations, and this groups them together. I'm going to just continue and wrap up, but we need to go through the item and read the elements of the public notice. Chapter 7, the signage chapter. Gotta love signs. No land development code would be complete without signage. And this chapter is in the main an improvement and recodification of our current sign chapter that really tries to express the requirements more clearly with pictures and tables. There are some substantive fundamental changes. The relocation provisions for billboards are no longer included. And there are a number of improvements to the enforcement provisions, the variance provisions, and other provisions that we're prepared to discuss going forward. So I will not continue to go through all the other chapters, but I encourage commissioners to familiarize yourselves with the material, and we're available to assist you going forward and coming to a better understanding of all the different provisions. I will mention Chapter 8, the transportation chapter, which substantially builds on the transportation demand management provisions of current code and includes a number of improvements that we encourage commissioners to familiarize yourself with. And again, we're available to provide assistance in that regard. So the second item before you is the comprehensive plan amendment. And as articulated in the staff report that was released on October 4th, the comprehensive plan amendment reflects the transition areas, and it shows them as an element of the growth concept map. And the accompanying text says that the transition areas supplement and supersede any flums to the extent of a conflict. It also says, in very clear terms, that outside of the designated transition areas, compliance with the applicable flums is still required. So if there was any attempt to or request to extend transition areas in areas with a neighborhood plan that were outside of the designated transition areas, a flum amendment would be required. Additionally, it says that within the transition areas, any zoning that would permit anything beyond the multi-unit residential projects that are envisioned for the transition areas would also require a flum amendment. So we feel this lays a planning level foundation for the transition area zoning that is before you in today's code, and those are the items before you for the public hearing. Thanks.
Thank you, Brent.